Hello, everyone.
Clap for yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm the founder and CEO of Charboost. And today we're going to talk about how game publishers can dramatically grow their revenue through direct deal advertising. But we have an hour, so actually we're going to talk a little bit about direct deals and then the other half about freemium games. And with us, we have Nick. I'm not going to pronounce your last name. He's the VP of Monetization of Natural Motion. Probably a bunch of you already heard him yesterday talk about Jenga Free and how they got 4 million users in 4 days and did OMG Pop. They're also publishers of My Horse. They're based in UK and San Francisco. And then we have Yusuf. I'm not going to pronounce your last name either. I'm sorry, you will have. He's the CTO of Animoca, and they're based in Hong Kong. Their most popular game is Pretty Pet Salon, and they're one of the biggest publishers on Android, but also on iOS. So they're both experienced direct deals makers and experienced freemium publishers. So we also want to give everyone the opportunity to ask questions. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask a question, we're going to have a discussion, and then every one question that I ask, I'm going to have one of you ask another question. So please be ready. And let's try to make...
we really are going to do this. Like, I actually know quite a few of you in the audience. So if no one's ready to ask a question, I'm going to start calling out. I mean, the reason why we are doing this is I feel one of the biggest things missing at a lot of conferences is providing actionable insights to actual individual studios. So, if there's something you're willing to share, if you have a question in regard to something that would work for your company, please feel free to ask it, because for us, we're still very new to the Singapore scene. Actually, Yusuf has quite a big experience here, but we also want to make sure something that's applicable for you that you can take away. So that's via questions. So let us know what are, situations, stuff that you're seeing that you want more information on or would like some insight, and we'd be happy to give it to you.
Cool. So first question for both of you. So since we're not doing intros because I introduced the two of you, I'm going to ask Nick to say what's the best thing that Animoca is doing, and Animoca to say what's the best thing you think Natural Motion is doing. And that's going to be like the intro question.
Yeah, awesome. I guess I'll start off with this. For us, the two biggest things we've seen that Animoca has done extremely well has first off solved this scenario of being both on iOS and Android at the same time. I think one of the biggest things that they've conquered is the Android fragmentation. I will tell you Android fragmentation is one of the largest problems I'll see. Yusuf will tell you that that's probably the easiest thing he's done. And that's amazing to us. For us, Natural Motion has historically been on the premium game side, and now we moved into freemium. Yet we've had extreme success on the freemium side, but only on iOS, because the Android port is something that, is not going to be as simple with so many devices out there, understanding the friction, payment solutions, etc. Animoca's done that extremely well. The second big thing that we've been pretty surprised, or I guess something that we are also following their lead on, is for them leveraging IP and also getting great visibility in all markets across the world. They're huge in Asia, and that's something that we're absolutely missing at Natural Motion. But more importantly, they have awesome market penetration, and not only in the EU but the US as well. When it comes to mobile gaming, understanding global is a huge asset, and that's something that we definitely look forward to seeing what Animoca is doing moving forward. So those would probably be my two big things.
Cool.
All right.
I think you need to speak closer to the mic.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, for those kind words. So, my take on Natural Motion, extremely cutting-edge 3D technology. Like, if you want to see what 3D can be moved onto, and Nick's been kind enough to share with me some of his upcoming titles, that's the company to look forward to. And in my opinion, the DAUs, the retention they get on the user base is far higher than what I've seen a single, a company with relatively few titles being able to do. So that's a testament to how much engaging they've made the game design, gameplay, the hooks, the virality. And that's what I I tell my team to understand. And we always share insights of how games work for other developers, what they're doing, like with respect to marketing, monetization. And Nick's, there's a lot of videos of Nick up on YouTube where he talks freely about his experience, what works for him. I encourage you to view them. You can learn a lot from him. He's one of the few guys in the gaming industry who's basically seen everywhere. this is frankly one of my first visits outside my office. Like, so I'm kind of Mr. Invisible, you know, and you learn a lot on Natural Motion, what they do. They've combined, you know, what I call traditional technology sale, built their IP, built multiple IPs on top of it, and you know, we see them growing into a fairly large, high-value company, you know, very, very soon.
Appreciate it.
Okay, cool. So this is why this panel is amazing. So first question is going to be about direct deals. And first of all, I want to define what direct deals is. Direct deals is basically advertising between gaming company and gaming company without going through an ad network. So directly from gaming company to gaming company. If Natural Motion buys advertising from Animoca, or the opposite. So my first question is, what is better, to buy or to exchange traffic, and why?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll start off on this. I don't think there's a scenario of, you know, if one is better than the other, that could holistically be stated for all companies, right? You know, this is that cliche answer. It depends on each company and where you're at. But I guess kind of going a little deeper in regards to how do you evaluate that. For us, you know, I always recommend individuals and companies who are starting off to start doing exchanges, because that's the easiest way to get visibility for your applications without paying significant CPI price points. When I say CPI, I mean cost per install. You could also pay on a CPM, cost per mil, or CPC, cost per click. But that tends to be very expensive for early developers. So if you're trying to get market penetration and trying to get visibility for your app, you probably don't want to start off by paying those $1, $2 CPIs on networks. In exchange, what you could do is you could find another developer, do a cross-promotion direct deal with them, where they provide you 10,000 installs and you provide 10,000 installs back. It allows you to get that initial user base where you can maybe do some A/B testing, you can maybe understand a little bit about your game, but you're mitigating your risk, and that's really valuable because you aren't putting that huge cost of user acquisition first. But then on the second side, I love to sell inventory, and that's because, you know, there are high CPI price points occurring. What you're seeing right now in mobile is a lot of individuals are looking to get, mobile market penetration, and these tend to be giants who have a lot of money. And you know, when they're willing to pay CPIs well over $2, $3, it starts making almost fiscal sense for you to be selling your inventory out. For us, we always like to tie it to a KPI. So if someone's willing to buy my user higher than my LTV, I'm most likely going to hand it off because I'm going to be increasing my net revenue down the road. It's rare to ever find those points in the market, but really for early developers, it does make sense to bring in that early revenue. The last thing to consider is whether or not you're going down the VC road and what KPI makes more sense for you. Is it DAUs or is it early revenue? The way I would always recommend it is, build your roadmap and make sure you're always looking back and tying it back to a KPI. So maybe in your company you believe retentions and daily active users are the most valuable. Great, then maybe cross promotion and direct deals is the best way to go for. But maybe you're trying to get the most net revenue in order to get early traction and show to your VC or an angel round that you're trying to grow. Then maybe you want to bring in net revenue, where direct deals, where you're actually selling the inventory, makes more sense.
After this, torrent of information, there's nothing much really to add, But in terms of what I really want to mention is when you're looking in terms of direct deals, right? The key thing to identify is what I would call genre overlap. So if you have a game, right, which is male oriented, try to reach out to partners who basically have male games. Don't reach out to a casual female oriented game and say, let's exchange traffic. It just doesn't work. It's just, you're wasting everybody's time in this. The platform where you're basically going to work, your CTRs are going to get short, the users on both sides are going to feel like, hey, I'm being gypped, there's no cross promotion on it. You want to be, you can use maybe the more games button or something and be more subtle on it. Genre overlap is the first thing you want to do. You also want to make sure that you're talking to companies of similar size. If you're a newbie and you're basically talking to a giant and say, hey, let's click exchange, that's not going to happen. You have to be respectful of that person. He's got a lot of deals already on the table. There's only so much you can, unless it's an off week where nobody's advertising and he's got free inventory to basically offer to give it to you. It could be, if you feel that it's a cartel-like approach where you can have a bunch of developers basically saying, okay, let's all cross-promote across each other, we won't charge either, grow up the base, and then you can start looking at, that also works, coming as a cartel-like mechanism. Now, how legal, illegal is that is relevant to each country's laws, right? But that's an approach which has been done on Facebook. I know on Facebook, cross promotion has been done in that mechanism. On mobile, I have not seen this mechanism as yet, but that may be something which I'm looking to see how that evolves into.
So how do you, well, actually I should ask the audience a question now.
I don't know.
So anyone in the audience has a question, or are we going to have Nick point someone?
Okay.
Genre competition, I mean, if you're making a certain kind of game and you try to cross-promote between the same genre, how does that interact between the developers? And how does it tie in with if it will published by different publishers itself?
Okay.
Well, I guess kind of the first part of it on the demographic overlap or the genre overlap. I mean, the reason why we tell you to do that initially is to get the best, click-through rates and best install rates for your application. There might be times where you probably don't want to go to a direct competitor, right? Where what you'll see is that there's kind of 3 niche genres in regard to the type of game design, whether it's casual, mid-core, or hardcore. But there's still the demographic overlap can occur. So there are actually hardcore horse racing games that we've seen now, and we have a casual My Horse, very, very wide funnel at the top. Well, we could actually cross-promote because they're really not, competitive in that frame. So that's the value there. When it comes to publishers, that does depend on the publisher deal you do have. Some do limit on, who you can actually, work with. Sorry, I guess they're feeding us now. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, actually, no, whatever.
Excuse me.
No, you got to sit with the food.
Yeah, that's fine.
So again, it does depend on your publishing deal. The way you also want to think about it is make sure you do, when you say demographic or genre overlap, look at the other, sub KPIs. So it'd be maybe geo-targeting. Maybe your app's only localized, in Mandarin or in certain languages. Probably you don't want to buy user acquisition in, Germany or something like that, where you don't maybe have English or, the local languages there. So make sure you try to target and get that core audience. In the end, right, you want to be optimizing your funnel. That's really what it comes down to. So whoever you partner with, take in the variables that make most sense for your game. So, look at the geo IP, look at the localization, look at what type of users you're going to be coming in, and make sure it's beneficial. But I think also you used to stress on a great point. Don't partner with big guys, because, or make sure you have understood caps. At Natural Motion, we actually partnered with a big guy that gave us, 75,000 installs in the first week, like in a cross promotion. It took me 3 months to repay that, and it was very difficult in that partnership initially. But now we learned that lesson the hard way, and that's something you should approach. Make sure you cap it at maybe only 2,000, 5,000, or whatever it may be, where it makes effective sense for both of you to grow linearly, because it does need to be a partnership. If it becomes one-sided, you're not going to get the value in the end.
It looks like you're saying this one side is when it's the partnership of exchange, but when they're paying you money.
Paying you money also, it depends on the platform. Like even in paying you money, there's only, in the end you got to remember, direct deal. The way I approach direct deal is I come from Hong Kong, so which is a financial background. I treat it like an investment bank scenario. So there's a front office, there's a front office, mid office, and a back office, right? Front office is the person who's basically interacting with the buyer and the seller. The mid office is actually executing, operating, making sure the creatives is done, the tracking is done. And the back office is the person, is the set of team who's basically making sure the reports are done, the invoicing is done. If you don't have these mechanisms in place, you really don't want to be in direct deals. That's where the value add of an ad network comes in. But if you feel you have a front, mid, and back office, or you can execute on that, then come into direct deals, and then, because that's a substantial time you're going to be able to allocate, okay? And that sort of is what I'm saying, but why working even on a paid deal with a big player, you may not be able to deal with it.
But I think just a quick stat behind that I'm fine with sharing. In regard to when you're doing direct deals and you're trying to publish and make money off of it, we actually did partner together on a direct deal. And I actually do care about demographic overlap because we have My Horse, and he has a pretty pet pony.
Yeah.
really great, strong overlap. And what we did is we ended up doing a direct deal, and what we saw was that we saw 3x higher click-through rates, 3x higher eCPMs, where the demographic overlap was extremely beneficial for what we were doing. And I still maintain that. You know, I don't do direct deals for my horse when it comes to, you know, a Funzio Crime City or these violent apps that it just won't work. I've seen the eCPM, so it does become valuable there. But of course, it becomes micromanaging and how much time do you have for that front.
So, just to summarize, it's a balance between how much time you're willing to devote, but also if you get a campaign that performs 3 times better, like you're saying, and you're getting 100% of the revenue, which is the good thing about direct deals, that no one gets a piece in the middle, then you're making 6 times more money.
True.
So in that case, like, actually, well.
It's okay, I like money. That's all.
My next question was about what defines a win-win in a direct deal. We've talked about making sure that there's overlap in the genre so that the performance is good. Is there anything else that you want to add, and like what defines a win-win, or you think we've already covered?
For us, when it comes to like a win-win solution, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm always looking out for the best interest of Natural Motion when it comes to a lot of these deals, but I also do care about facilitating strong partnerships, because if they buy from me once, I want to make sure the experience is good enough that they come back to me again, and vice versa. If I buy from them once, I want to make sure the partnership was strong, that I can get access to that inventory down the road. So a few of the elements that we've seen that have gone really well in regard to a win-win scenario is transparency. Usually right now, My Horse is more of a publisher on these direct deals, and we actually let them know what are the expected clicks or installs they'd be getting on a day basis. This is really important for a lot of networks, because what you'll see is a lot of the larger players are looking to hit specific install goals on a daily basis. So if they can kind of estimate what your network will bring in, it helps build a really strong partnership, because then they then know what they can count on us in the future. And that's been really valuable. Aside from that is also being flexible and building the communication outside of Chartboost as well, or any of these direct deal networks. I talk to all these major game developers on a daily basis, and that's really helped build a win-win scenario where we have better understandings on how we can help one another. The last thing is being flexible and providing extra like real deadlines. For us, we have a lot of individuals who are willing to buy our network or buy traffic from our network. But the truth is, it starts getting really competitive. So I let individuals know real timelines. Hey, if you do want to book my inventory, you need to give me a 2 weeks or a month notice. Once we have that real understanding, it facilitates much stronger communication. Because the last thing I want to do is someone come in at the last second and be like, hey, I want to buy your inventory now. But they don't have the understanding I can't fill it, and it does, maybe ruin that relationship down. So if you have strong transparency and strong communication, you'll be able to build that out in the future. And of course, if you're within the region, you can meet with them, talk to them via email or Skype. Build a relationship outside of it too, because you'll be able to help in regard to the knowledge you have on the industry.
And the other thing I want to add is, like, if initially when you start doing direct deals, first couple of times you basically see the revenue, say, oh great, it's 100% revenue, I'm going to do more and more. There is a tendency to oversell, and that actually hurts, because you might be basically selling more, you might have taken on more deals than actually what you have been really able to offer. So everybody gets such a small piece of the pie that it doesn't make sense. You want to also control the intake. You want to limit the direct deal flow into what you feel you can publish and what it is. Sometimes it may be that you could take one more deal, but it's better to let it go and give an advertiser more of the fill than you could basically have like bought somebody else. So is it leaving money in the table? Yes, it is, but it'll help you in the long run. And the other thing with direct deals is you have to be careful with respect to channel conflict, because you may get the same deal coming from multiple places, each with differing price points. If you've committed to one place, like, don't basically say, okay, fine, I'm going to like drop this and move to the other place. Word gets around very quickly that you're channel surfing, and that isn't great either.
Okay, so audience question. We should get a question from that side. I'm sorry that hopefully the sound can get there, but any question from that side? Do you know anyone?
I do, but come on, guys. Really don't want to force people. All right, we'll skip this round, I guess, and then, hopefully you guys can have questions down at the end.
You want them to make sure they have lunch?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's food coming in. It's a weird time. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's talk about targeting.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
targeting.
Are we gonna just talk about it? You're gonna
Yeah.
ask me- okay.
No
let's-
question.
Let's talk about targeting. Okay.
What do you think? Why is it important? Does it matter?
Yes, targeting matters a lot. So, whatever, within any advertising platform you build, you really want to make sure you're targeting, whether it's direct deal advertising or any form of advertising, correctly. Like, at what point do you show, the thing, how engaged the person has been within your game before you first show him advertising in the first place. What type of demographics, and if he's a paid user, you want to show him or not, it's up to you. I mean, each of us has our own opinions. We don't want to force them upon you. You've got to make the choice, right? And what is considered a paying user with respect to your game? Like, is it paying at a certain price point, or is it paying at any price point makes him a paying user? And, and what is, like, do you want to restrict him of cross-promotion? Because you may use, cross-promotion within partners you want to have to basically drive that. And I guess, there's a lot more to targeting. I think Nick can speak for hours on targeting. Like, he I think.
I have no life. Sorry.
So he's written the book on targeting.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know. I guess the one thing I do want to talk about really quickly is kind of better understanding, when it comes to targeting, it all comes down to what are your internal KPIs as a company. I think that's really what every decision needs to boil down to. Are you looking to increase retention? Where's your funnel weak? Do you have lots of users coming at the top, but maybe you're not monetizing your freemium users at the bottom of your funnel? So how do you expand that, and how does advertising really play a role in that? So the one thing I would really recommend for any of you to look into when it comes to targeting is how do you translate it back to your long-term KPIs? Because in the end, you're building a company. So for us, at Natural Motion, the two core KPIs at the top are, of course, monetization and retention. So what we tried doing is figuring out what are the sub KPIs and how do they really attach to that from a targeting perspective. Aside from that, we really do large geo-targeting. We also look at the the user base and how the users are reacting to the ads. The one thing, I'm sure you'll hear this buzzword, but it's as true as possible. A/B test everything. We do the exact same thing. We sometimes only show ads to certain cohorts and look at the impact on our KPI. How did it hurt our retention? How did it hurt our LTV? Did it increase our retention? Did it increase our LTV? And then make actionable insights, right? When you're making decisions, you want to have reasons for it, and you really want to have data behind it. If you have data, you're going to be making 99% better decisions in the long run for your company, as long as you're measuring correctly. If you measure incorrectly, I can't help you. Question?
Oh, perfect.
Oh.
Hi.
Who are you and what company do you come from?
Thank you. I'm Jindo. I'm from App Annie. I will be speaking later at 1 p.m., so please stay around. Okay, so my question is from
Nice
your...
drop.
Thanks. So from your personal experience and in exchanging traffic between MyHorse and Pretty Pat Pony, so what do you notice about users when they click from your app into their app? Does the user stop playing with your app, or is it more the situation where they play both apps?
So our belief is if users are engaged with your game, and you can't stop them from finding other games, right? It's always going to be like, will they stop playing my game? They are similar, but yet they're slightly different. Pretty Pet Pony is a casual, time-oriented game. My Horse is a full 3D, simulation game, right? We've not seen to the extent that, our user base dramatically dropped, right? And instead, what happened was word of mouth picked up, and then the user base grew because My Horse was able to drive users in region where My Horse was popular, and Pretty Pet Pony drove users to My Horse where we were popular, right? So it's ideal if you can identify that there is a geo distinction. Depending on where the other partner's app is ranked, sub-ranked in a given region.
So you're saying that the key thing here is that you cross-promote each other at a different life cycle, different parts of the life cycle of the app.
I think really the way what Yusuf's saying here is right. There's value add no matter what, where we have two distinct user bases in two different regions for that cross promotion. But I think I know the question you're asking. Unfortunately, you're not going to get the best answer here because you're asking for a lot of proprietary stuff. The best way I'll put it is right. Internally, we do evaluate how did it hurt our retention, how did it hurt our long-term planning, more food, I guess. And in the end, the easiest way for us is that we're evaluating back to our KPIs. The best way to put it, when I evaluate it with him, I'm more than happy to buy again because it was net ROI or it was a net gain for how we evaluate it. So again, it comes down to your individual algorithm. That's something you want to assess, right? When you serve those ads, how did your retention get hurt for those users who did click through, right? I mean, Chartboost does a great job where you can actually get the UDIDs or whatever the targeting you want from a click, impression, and an install. So you can see the impact of all those user base, and you need to have the analytics on your end.
Right.
I mean, I could do another hour presentation on what are the best analytics surfaces in order to understand that, but that's something you do have to build, and that's something how we at Natural Motion calculate on an individual basis for everything.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of a specific question for each of you.
You ready?
So I'm going to say both questions so you have time to think about them. I want to ask you, I mean, your special situation is that you have a lot of relationship with other studios, and you have two kinds of direct deals, the direct deals that make you money and the direct deals that are just between studios that are partners. So I would like to learn more about that. And Nick, I want to hear more about what happened with Jenga, and what are the direct deals that you made during these 4 million users in 4 days, and how did you end up making more money with a free app than a paid app through direct deals, etc. So who wants to start? You, sir?
I'll start. Okay, so direct deals with what I would call non-partner studios which we work with, right? You can think of them as a form of cross-promotion, for want of a better word, but to some extent, the goal is that they are internally growing the entire distribution platform and overall then building up sufficient inventory to be able to then serve it to an external audience, right? Now, again, some of the studios, then not all the games within the studios, right, basically are cross-promoted because, again, genre overlap, and as well as demographic overlap is key. So if a studio is making a somewhat male-oriented game, they're not going to promote it to another studio which has a female-oriented game. So that is always looked into account, there is studio-oriented games. And at the same time, a studio may be interested in a certain platform, a certain region, which other studios may not have. And that's what they are able to transparently share and say, hey, we want to do it, but we can't do it, type of thing.
Right.
That's very key. And the other type of deals which are starting to come in are what are not necessarily now direct deals between game companies. I'm seeing a lot of what I would call quasi-ad networks coming and approaching developers directly and saying, we have a certain set of fill which we want to do. Can we bump up? Now, one could argue, is that a direct deal or is that an ad network deal, right? I classify it as direct deal because, it's like I did not approach the ad network; they approached me, and whether it's an ad network or whether it's a large, company coming and saying hey, we want direct placement on you. I classify that as direct deal. I know Maria says direct deal is between game developers.
We're going to talk more about that
right.
when we do freemium.
Right. So I say direct deal is any advertiser approaching you directly without you basically installing an ad unit from an ad server, whether it's AdMob, InMobi, whoever it is, so the assumption is that you have an ad serving targeting technology available to you, and that's only possible if you can do that.
Cool, thank you. Nick?
Yeah, so I guess the question is more or less, what were the short, quick lessons learned from our, for those of you who missed my presentation, we have a premium app called Jenga, which is, licensed from the IP. And historically, it's been a paid game, and we experimented making it free for a short amount of time about a couple months ago. In 4 days, we did about 4 million downloads and reached #1 overall in the world. So I guess the question then is, during that free time, we actually did monetize the app via ads, and that was through Chartboost. So I guess there's some, what are the quick lessons learned from that? For us, the big value prop was understanding the other side of the demographics we weren't looking at. By that, historically, we only have one other freemium game at the moment with My Horse that's really gender specific. It's focused on females. Jenga becomes a little bit more gender neutral. So we were really able to see what were the CPIs, what were the conversions of male-oriented games on our network and other, hardcore games as well, which is always great data to bring into your network. As as any company who's building out a portfolio, you want to know where the market is going. So we got a lot of great data there. Aside from that, we were able to see a new a placement location. So when you have ads and you integrate them in the game, right, you're putting them in unique placements. Within MyHorse, we actually don't have them at the launch of a game. We have them actually pretty deep at specific other area points where they're like mini games. For Jenga, we learned a new location. We actually did it at the launch of app, and we got to see what were the relative click-through rates of that, how did it affect retention, and we did some small A/B tests behind it to understand what were the cohort impacts in regard to short-term, long-term retention, and of course monetization. So from there, in that experiment, not only were we able to effectively monetize this, we made very significant money via ads, but we brought in a lot more data, which in my opinion is much more valuable for a company aiming to grow. And that's the analytics that we kept keeping in. We tracked, again, the impression, the click, the install data as well. And we're now evaluating how it did affect all the individual users on a per user basis. When you start getting that type of data, that's when you start leveraging for much stronger long-term plays.
Cool, thank you. Audience question. So.
Doesn't even have to be a question, you could tell me a joke.
Audience participation.
Yeah. Hey.
Perfect.
You want cookies? Go for treats. If you ask a question, I'll give you a Mentos. That's what I got up here.
Right. My name is Anuj. I work for Rollicule Games out of India. First of all, Yusuf, you need to get the mic a little closer. So
yeah,
sure. It's pretty hard hearing it.
Just get it in your hand.
Just stuff it in.
No,
Just do some karaoke.
Thanks.
Right. So my question is, the problem with, I see is that with direct deals, if you are not really too big, how does that affect the inventory? And if you're too big, don't you want to sell your inventory? Isn't it that more profitable than doing direct deals? So how do you find the right balance? Like if you're really big, then probably you will want to sell your inventory to other developers. And so how do you find that balance of how do you target which kind of people do you?
I'd like to take a lead on that. So if you're too big, it's ultimately up to you. What is, not every instance in time do you want to look at revenue, because maybe you want to look at your own inventory for a cross-promotion side of things, and basically you want to reserve top billing for a few of your new titles which are coming up and doing it, or you have some strategic reasons not to do so. It's each person makes their own decision on what, how much revenue they want to do, what is the price point they want to basically optimize for. Right? And as Nick says, it's up to the LTV. If you feel that that advertising represents a substantial portion of your top line revenue versus in-app and other thing, then you can basically optimize for that. If advertising is basically a relatively small proportion, but in-app is still or other forms of in-app revenue is still very high, then you can basically say it takes time to basically conclude any direct deal. And you can say, look, I don't want to do direct deals. Now the question then it becomes, platforms can help you to some extent, but you have to know that direct deals are time consuming on every segment, whether it's whoever's doing the front office, mid office, and back office, right? And there's only so much you can push with respect to without building up your own internal ad network system within the company. So the question you have to ask yourself, are you going to be a game developer or basically become an ad network if you want to drive too much direct deals,
So yeah, just following up on that, when it comes to making a decision, again, this is going to always be my answer. Drive it back to your core KPIs when you're trying to make a decision. What are you looking to do? Right? Selling inventory always seems like the very logical decision because you're able to evaluate, that you're getting cash in. But maybe you need to start looking at what's the effective CPIs you're selling off your users off. Maybe your average CPI, cost per install, that you're selling it off to is only 40 cents, right, on the network. But the LTV in your game is over $1.50. Maybe you want to be bringing those users in because there's a huge money-making opportunity there that it makes more sense from a cross-promotion basis, right? So it really does depend on your game. If you have a very low LTV, you don't monetize, your users don't retain, and they like leave after 3 days, yeah, maybe you want to be selling them off because you've already gotten the most value out of them that you're just trying to resell. If you're trying to make a much long-term play where you have, strong 7-day retention, strong 30-day retention, or you're going further out and have amazing 90-day retention, maybe you want to be keeping those users in because you could be making much more money off of that. So when you're trying to evaluate that, it really just comes down to your core KPIs and how your game is built. If you understand how to make a great game design with a dual virtual currency model on a very wide funnel game, meaning that lots of users can discover it, it might make sense for you bringing those users in rather than just selling users out. So again, your core KPIs will define it. And just as a quick break, I'm going to be using like the following 5 terms if you don't know them. LTV is lifetime value. ARPU is average revenue per user. ARPDAU is average revenue per daily active user. And then retention, usually I'm utilizing a 1 or 7-day retention metric.
Cool, thanks. So we're going to move on and start talking about direct deals, and we're going to start talking about freemium. So the first transition question is in-app commerce versus advertising. It's not a question, it's just like a title.
I don't think you understand how a question works, Maria. I'm really confused there.
But tell me your thoughts. I want to leave it more open.
Go ahead, Yusuf.
Okay. So
we like to have fun.
in a freemium game, I don't know of freemium games which are particularly designed with respect to advertising in mind. Most freemium games are designed with in-app purchases, basically, the typical drug dealer type approach. The first hits for free, you basically you get hooked in and you start.
You're supposed to say that.
Yeah. So you basically get
We do not promote drug dealing in Ultra Nation. I just want to say that as a disclosure.
So that's basically, in the end, IAP to me represents what a studio, a publisher ultimately aims for, right? Advertising to me is gravy on the top, right? If you are able to maximize it, albeit but the processes or whatever in the studio are geared towards maximizing IAP. That is the thing at our studio, right? That's why I guess it's the CTO handling ad sales right now, which is not really something we want to look at in terms of long-term mechanics. Having said that, advertising is starting to get a bigger piece of the pie, particularly in Southeast Asia, where brand advertising is really picking up substantially. And brands are reaching out directly to basically titles, to studios where they were looking at brand placements, which I feel is another form of direct deals. So direct brand placement into games for brand placement advertising. That's something which is already done in United States and Europe, but in Asia is starting to pick in. Because one thing you have to know is consumers are spending more and more times on mobile versus any other media form. And brands are recognizing that. And that's where I see advertising dollars come in from traditional ad units, whether it be it interstitial, video, banners, whatever that's coming in.
As the VP of monetization, I think in terms of just monetization. So when it comes to in-app purchases or other third-party monetization solutions, the second thing I look at is kind of just optimization in general. So of course, you really want to build a game that's focused on IAP, as that's where the revenue is. There are great games right now doing, 7 figures a month just utilizing IAP models. The way I think of it is, how can I optimize revenue on a per user basis? And this is where ads become really interesting, or this is where other third-party monetization solutions become very interesting, as you're trying to extract the most value out of your users and providing them, whether it's via direct deals or interstitial advertising or maybe third-party offer walls. So the way I would always tell you is that you still want to build a solid game as the forefront, on whatever app you're trying to build. But take advertising and other third-party monetization solutions and start considering them from the beginning. There is some design considerations that need to occur, whether it's a UI, UX placement, or whether it's understanding how your game loop and compulsion loop ends and where an ad needs to be placed. If you start thinking this from the forefront, you'll be able to optimize in the long run. And that's something that we do constantly in Natural Motion, is where you don't want to be just slapping on monetization at the end and be like, hey, I'm going to make some free money, right? For us, it's I want to make the most money on a per user basis, and how do I do it with all these options out there? And that's what you get to do, as a great game designer, and that's really what you want to focus when you are building a company.
So in-app commerce first.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's way more money. Yeah, in-app commerce first.
Yeah, in-app commerce.
But I don't like prioritizing. It's called optimize all three. Like optimize everything.
So what are some of the tips to build a better in-app commerce economy or a better in-app commerce portfolio or a better in-app commerce system?
Are we telling them how to build a game now? That's what we've gone to? Yusuf, you can start this because you actually are the CTO and build games.
I guess I'm not really the 100%. You need a game designer for this.
Yeah.
Like, frankly, I mean, that's I wouldn't know where to begin in like building in-app commerce. There's so much. In the end, games are emotional. Like I mean, can you make an emotional connection to the game? Like whether by the use of licensed IP or your own IP, whatever it is. And does that emotion, does the game design loop, the funnel loop, basically drive you to the point that you're emotionally vested into the game, that the natural, you can do an impulse buy to the first in-app, thing. Once that impulse buy is taken care of, right, then you can move further down the food chain. At the same time, it matters a lot whether the platform which you're basically promoting on, whether it enables ease of in-app purchases, right? And that is something that's always, I talk a lot to platform operators, like whether it's Android or carriers and everything, that make it easy for users. There should not be friction. Like Android, while it's growing, there is still some friction with respect to payments in certain parts of the world. Certain parts is super easy. Carrier billing is extremely useful, and can you basically price it so that it doesn't, you don't basically get complaints from parents that, hey, you just basically broke the bank.
Yeah.
That's something which is important. Like
So I guess putting on my game design hat for this scenario, it does, of course, depend on what type of economy you're building, right? Are you utilizing a single virtual currency model, a dual virtual currency model? Is this going to be hard versus soft currency? So you do need to take this all into consideration. So the first and foremost thing you need to do is understand where the market is. Look at what the top grossing games are doing well, and understand how their economy is being built, right? The most common model right now you're seeing from an economy perspective or an in-app commerce is dual virtual currency with the hard versus soft currency model. When you are going down this route, there's certain things you have to take into consideration: economy balance, compulsion loops, choke points, etc. Right? And I could go down, and again, this would be another 2-hour conversation on how to build another game design. But again, I'm going to give you my one line: like A/B test everything, understand different price points. Have an Excel sheet where you know your economy balance, know what's the maybe the ultimate cost of what one user might pay in order to get through your entire game loop, right? How do they complete it from start to finish? Is that $100? Is that $1,000? Is that $50,000, right? I don't know. And that's something you want to constantly tweak because there's a lot of stuff you want to learn. And that's when you want to A/B test, whether it's via soft launch or making sure that only certain cohort of users get different experiences. But you could learn a lot by looking at what the top games are doing. Play through it and actually take notes. What's occurring? When do they monetize you? How long did it take? How many steps? What did the tutorial flow look like? How do they introduce you to monetization or maybe long-term retention? And just take those small notes and you'll start seeing strong recurring themes. When you start understanding these recurring themes, you could just do fast follows. That's what this game market is really about. There's a lot of competitive games that are just, I don't want to say clones, but very generous copies, or they've taken a lot of influence from one or the other. But what they've done is that they understand the game economy balance initially, and then they understand the game design mechanics for the short and long run. The thing is, at Natural Motion, I'm very new to this scene as well, but I will constantly be learning from the first day I started till Natural Motion till 10 years out. Game design constantly changes, and that's why you need to be up to date with where the market is. But also, user behavior is not easy to define, so you're going to be constantly learning how your users interact. Let your users maybe even, allow you to focus on how you build the game for them, because they'll be able to tell you whether or not this game is worth monetizing, worth playing, etc. So look at those core KPIs and test everything out.
Cool. So that's about in-app commerce. Moving back to advertising.
Is that a question, Maria?
So yesterday we were preparing this discussion. We talked about how to deal with ad networks. What are the keys for a successful relationship with the ad networks? And how do you deal with them?
Want to start? Or want me to start?
I think you should do it.
Okay. How do you deal with ad networks? Okay. Most ad networks hate me, so let's start off. I'm very hard in negotiations, but okay. So when dealing with ad networks, geez, where do I start here? First and foremost, you want to understand what that ad network's value prop is. Whenever you talk to an ad network, try getting as much data as possible from the front. Ask them for real case studies. See what their valuation is. Even ask them for testimonials. A lot of them are more than happy to give you like, hey, this is one of our core partners. Here's their email. Feel free to talk to them. And you can actually learn a little bit about it. Lastly, evaluate their tech when you're ever looking at an ad network. What you're going to see is that, what I hate is, I have a list of 100 ad networks, whether it's monetization or user acquisition. I'm sure Yusuf has the same. You don't want to integrate all 100 unless you really hate your engineers. I like mine so far, so I don't want to do that. So you might want to start figuring out how to prioritize that when you're talking with ad networks. Is the integration going to be simple for your game? Do they have a server-side API, or do you have to put in a full SDK in order to run their service? Those are really important questions where you could be saving a lot of time when it comes to integration and getting it live. Of course, in the end, my favorite line, A/B test everything. Everything. Test what each network is doing. See what the real results are. When it's on user acquisition, when you're talking to ad networks, ask them, at this price point, if I'm buying users at 50 cents, how many installs can you serve to me on a daily basis in these regions? Because what you need to know are what their real expectations are. The biggest problem you're going to see with any ad network is they're going to give you that case study, which is an outlier most likely. It's going to be that one company that made $1 billion in a day somehow, right? That's not going to be your expected results. So try figuring out what are the expectations you can get, and it'll allow you to build your strategy and your roadmap much more effectively. Lastly, go for strong rev shares. I spoke at Casual Connect Hamburg, and that was pretty much my entire presentation is how to deal with ad networks. And the one thing I'll tell you is that ad networks need you more than you need them, even if you're a two-man shop. Because when it comes to any single ad network, there are another 5 or 10 competitors. So they need to fight for your business. Make them earn it. Make sure you get strong rev shares. I recommend 70-30 as a minimum, but you could debate that with whoever your team is.
One thing I want to add is not all if you're strong in the region, find out who is the ad network in that region. And regional ad networks outperform global ad networks substantially. It is challenging because a lot of times the regional ad network, there'll be a communication gap. So, if you're big in Japan, there are big Japanese ad networks, particularly with respect to on Android with offer wall monetization. But frankly, you'll see a lot of documentation in Japanese quasi-English, and it can be challenging to integrate it, but the revenue returns are definitely worth the effort to work with, with respect to advertising, right? Similar for user acquisition, you have to find out who the big ad networks are strong with reach. You can't basically say, I'm going to use iAd and AdMob. Actually, nobody should use that.
Never.
And iAd is and understand, I'm technical, so I can evaluate very quickly when an ad network sends me the doc and I say, no, this is not really going to work, without even bringing in an engineer. But you might, if you're going down the, the advertising route, you might want to invest in an integration engineer if you feel that, hey, I can't basically steal my top game engineer and basically work on ad network integration, right? That's something, is an investment you have to basically factor in. Or your user act, your monetization guy can grok, API documents very quickly, which is rare.
Very rare.
So any question from the audience about ad networks?
Come on, ask us a hard one. We're okay. I'm so disappointed.
Okay, so the next question is about ad units. Banner ads, interstitials, offer walls, video. What are your thoughts?
Yusuf, this is you.
Try everything, I would say. A/B test everything. It depends. Again, not every user is equal. Some users will basically consume video ad units like there's no tomorrow. Some users will hate it. You can't really, there's no one true answer. If somebody says, oh, only video or big, large-scale interstitials work, it doesn't. And also it depends whether, if, some people hate banners, but sometimes there's a natural place within your UI where you can basically insert a banner, and it kind of, we've seen performance extremely well, and volume is much larger for that because it shows most of the time. Maybe your in-app screen is designed in such a way that you can slide in a 320 by 50, and it's basically you get reasonable fill for it. Cross promotion, we've seen banners work. Sometimes banners have not worked. Video units are starting to pick up, but most of the tech around video is relatively weak. So I'm still skeptical on that. I'm keeping an open mind, but I'm still skeptical on video ad units per se.
So A/B test everything, okay. So Nick, you have A/B tested everything. What are your strong opinions about each? Because that's not an answer, I'm sorry.
So you're asking my secrets then. So early game developers that I either advise or invest in, I always tell them this advice, so I'll give you the same, right? Right now what we're seeing is interstitial ads are by far outperforming when it comes to an ECPM, right? Your effective cost per mil. And that's usually what's the revenue you're making per 1,000 impressions. So for us, we're a big fan of interstitial ads at Natural Motion for two major reasons, right? First and foremost is the outperformance when it comes to a revenue perspective. But secondly, we're able to place them in natural breakages of play so they don't feel as disruptive in the game. Like I said before, right, when you're building out games, you want to take advertising and third-party monetization services into consideration when you're building out your game. So, as Yusuf said, he's completely right. If you have a location where a banner ad could slide in, it could make great sense for your game. Right now, for Natural Motion, it doesn't. So we like to go first to interstitial ads. More importantly, we're placing interstitial ads when I say those natural breakages of play where it's usually at the end of a level, end of a small loop where clearly you're not going to be disrupting the gameplay where it's not in the middle where you're petting your horse and bam, ad comes. It's going to probably ruin the user experience, and that's something you want to check. So interstitial ads are what we use right now for a primary monetization service. We don't utilize banner ads because right now the ECPM is very low. And because, like I said, from a game design perspective, it doesn't meet our vision at the moment. Aside from that, we utilize offer wall networks. For those of you not familiar with offer walls, these are an alternative monetization solution where historically within your game, if you have in-app purchases, users can pay directly via carrier billing or whatever it may be to buy, whatever 50 coins or 100 gems in your game. What alternative offer walls provide what offer walls provide are alternative payment solutions where users can complete actions to earn free currency. So this could be watching a video or completing a small action, looking through an ad, etc. And this is great for two major reasons. First and foremost, you're getting revenue from that because it's a rev share deal. When they complete a video ad, you're getting a couple cents, 4 cents. There's even ad units where CPA offers where it's sign up for a credit card. You get paid $40 for that stuff. That's huge. The second thing that's amazing about offer wall networks right now is that the user is only getting currency that can be used in their game. So it's like them paying you to have stronger retention. So for us, it's almost a win-win scenario, and we continue to work on that front. For us, on the interstitial ad side, we utilize Chartboost and Playhaven. On the offer wall side, we utilize Archie. And those are extremely valuable there. The other things that are starting to come out are, the video ad networks as a forefront, Ad Colony, Flurry, even Tapjoy now has that type of solution as well. Yep, exactly, that they're coming in. I'm also the same. I'm very skeptical, as Yusuf stated. I'm not too sure whether or not the payouts will be there and whether or not that disruption of 15 seconds to 30 seconds is worth it for my user game experience. But again, what am I going to do? I'm going to be testing it out. I want to see how it affects my retention, whether or not the monetization makes sense. Aside from that, what else is new in the monetization scene? Oh, you're starting to see reward networks. So this is like a Keep and a Tap Me. Again, extremely skeptical. We've already looked at them. We haven't really seen the fit yet. But again, this is something that you need to go talk to them. See what their SDK is. See whether or not the monetization works for you and your game design. But those are some ones who are have great VC funding and are willing to grow in this market. That's I think covers it for me.
True. I mean, one thing as the tech guy I can tell you, every SDK you evaluate takes substantial time. So in the end, you got to vet things very quickly. and you can't distract your core engineers. And ultimately, core game, has to win. Like, if you, you don't want to be in SDK hell where the number of SDKs and the size of the SDK basically outgrows your core game size itself, right? And, it's, at some point, you've got to say enough is enough. Like, take it, and maybe you made a mistake, but just live with it. If at the next, depending on your contract, if you can get it out at the earliest opportunity, move on. Like, don't delve too much into it that, you could have got, hindsight is 20/20, but if you pick the wrong SDK, either figure out a way to remotely turn it off, which you should always have, some mechanism, or then wait till the next update cycle and then get rid of it, like, But don't hurt your users just because, like, you really want to, like, try this one SDK out.
Okay, so just to finish, because we're running out of time, I have one last question, and I want to ask in one quick sentence, what is your biggest learning and the best decision you've made in the last year about your company and freemium?
Joining Natural Motion. Love my team. Okay.
And you're hiring.
And we're hiring now. I guess a real answer to that, a best decision as a company would be us making the move to freemium. We're really bullish on this opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, we were historically a paid game company and moved to freemium, and the opportunity in freemium is huge. So leveraging our tech and moving forward on that front is a huge advantage for us in the space. That's by far the best. In regard to freemium, I hate saying this again, testing everything. I've learned so much. There's so much information, and it's a huge advantage for me when I know the real expectations for each network. I won't tell you those, but that's something for you to learn, where you can now, I know off the back of my hand what are the expected eCPMs for each individual network and whether or not I should be prioritizing them or running them at any given point. And that's a huge advantage because there I'm able to optimize my revenue by 2, 3x, 4x compared to the next competitor. That was a really long sentence.
Yes, that was good. Moving to freemium was the best decision.
Well, we've been in freemium, and what I've learned the most is, while everybody talks about Android fragmentation, we basically found that actually is a choice consumers are willing to make, and consumers appreciate it if developers take the effort, make the game work, particularly in Asia, where low-end devices, and I've showed a few people, and some people have purchased $100 US tablets, right, which you may not see in Europe, in North America. They are flying off the shelves in China, in second tier, third tier, even in Hong Kong. Tablets such as the Kindle Fire, people have figured out hacks to make it work in Asia, but they are basically selling extremely well. So low-cost Android devices are basically the biggest growth area in terms of distribution. You just cannot look only at Google Play as the Android distribution platform. You need to find out where you can grow Android distribution. And of course, discovery is basically, is a big challenge, right? And I'm always constantly bouncing ideas with people as to how to improve discovery, it's a challenge for us because at some point, the price points for user acquisitions are not starting to make sense anymore.
Cool.
So understand how long one sentence is. I'm so sorry.
So conclusion: moving to freemium and developing for Android, dealing with fragmentation is worth it.
Any other questions before we I do want to give this last opportunity as we haven't asked questions. Please.
Any other questions from the audience before we give it to Pani?
Oh yes. So excited. This is all I care about. Yes.
When you say testing, how much time should you allocate to accurately test for the metric?
Yeah, so a lot. I mean, in regard to percentages, right? I mean, I would always recommend you should have a special, a separate testing team, or you should be leveraging third-party services, right? Analytics companies are already doing this. I would recommend looking at a Contagion, a Swerve, even some of the freemium ones like Flurry. AppSolar has a new service, Localytics. There's quite a few out there, and maybe they could help bridge the gap where you're able to get it. But make sure whenever you utilize any of those services, you take the time to integrate it effectively. With Flurry, that's that's a freemium service, but it does take a lot of time to integrate it where you're looking at funnel analysis and understanding long-term retention, etc. Make sure your engineers go through it, because in the end, you want to make sure you're capturing all the data possible. If you miss out on that data, there's no way of getting it back, right? So store it. Maybe you don't have to analyze it or interpret it immediately, but you want to have that opportunity to go back and do that. From a time perspective, like I said, separate team. I would always recommend to do it. If you're a small team, I would spend 10 to 15% of that time getting that data and interpreting it. Because in the end, data should be driving a lot of what you do. Game design should still be the front. In core, I'm never going to say I'm like a Zynga where I'm an analytics company first, but I will tell you analytics play a large role in what I do when I'm trying to move forward.
Thanks.